I'm going to show you today how to put texture on paper. Now, if you saw some of my other videos, you'll probably remember that I had these three little birds traced out, and I said I was going to use them for a future project. So today I'm going to show you what exactly I did with it. I took inspiration from these little guys, and if you notice, they don't go all the way to the end of the paper. So this is what I'm going to teach you today. I just went ahead and just traced these little guys on a tracing paper, and I am going to put them on watercolor paper. The good thing about these little journals is if you can get these little clippies and put them on each side of the page, it will keep your page open and flat. And then when you're done with it, you can just pick these up, stick your little extras in here, and close it, and save it for the next time you're painting, right? So today we're going to use light dimensional ground, and this you can apply with a sponge. You can do it wet, dry, it doesn't matter. You can use a brush. What it does is it creates like an absorbent ground on your watercolor paper, and there's many ways that I work with this, but today I'm going to show you just one way to do it. And we're going to use a stencil, and I am going to use a little catalytic rubber tool here, but you can just use old credit card or palette knife, it doesn't matter. And if you want to purchase the kit, I have this on my website, and it comes with some of the dimensional ground. It comes with your watercolor paper with your texture already on it, the line drawings, the color picture, and the paints. Okay, so how do we use this dimensional ground? So I went ahead and traced this. I would not usually trace this dark, but for the camera I have to, so that you can see where I'm going. And if I was to just use this the way it is, there is no texture on it, nothing to pull from. So I had this little stencil laying around. So what I'm going to do is open up my jar, and I'm going to pull a little bit of this ground here, light dimensional ground, and I'm just going to rub it on my stencil. And it dries fast, but for this video I already have another one done, and then this way we don't have to wait. But sorry for moving the camera on you. This is a long handle brush. So I'm going to take a little bit more of this. And if you put it on thick, it will make thicker leaves. And if you put it thin, it will make you thinner leaves. So you control how much you want to put on here. And why am I using this and not something else? Well, what I like about this is it's very absorbent. And when you put the paint on, you can shade many different ways, okay? So I'm going to put this to the side. I'm going to wipe my little tool out so it doesn't dry on there. And this is your texture. So now I'll have to wait for that to dry. Now, let's say, for example, I put texture on that little eye, and I really didn't want it there. If you were to take a regular brush and try to wipe it down, it would just kind of rip your paper, right? But I have this little scrubber from Silver Brushes. It's a 1/2 inch scrubber, and it has a really stiff filament to it, but it's great to remove things. If you take your time and go very slowly, I can take that texture away from my eye very slowly and just wipe it on my paper towel. But don't use water with this, just leave it alone. And then later on in the video, I'm going to show you how you can remove paint from your palette if you didn't want the paint to go on this. So again, it's dry. I'm gonna take my paper towel and I'm just gonna rub it off. So we'll let this dry. And now this one was the one that I did earlier, and it's dried completely. And I am going to use watercolor paints for this. Just because it's easier to use here on my palette. So to get my watercolors activated, all I do is take a little spray bottle and put a little bit of water in my palette. Since I don't know what colors I'm going to use, you and I are going to paint this together. Today I'll be working with another silver brush. It's the Silver Silk 88 and it's a 1/2 inch wash glaze. And the reason why I'm using this brush is because exactly what the name says, it holds a lot of water in it so that if you can do washes on your little bird, you don't have to work so hard. So I'm going to show you how to do this with the minimum amount of paint. So first thing I'm going to do is rinse my brush out, and I'm going to start with, let's start with a light color. Let's start with a yellow. So I take my yellow that's been activated and I put it on the side of my palette here, right? And I am just going to briefly just put a little bit of paint on here. Now, if it's too dry, I'm going to pick up a little bit of more water because I want this really washy. And I'm going to do the same thing with the little guy underneath here. I'm going to grab a little bit more paint and put it on here. Now, I didn't really mean to cover this whole area here, so I'm just going to take my brush and just wipe a little bit of that paint off of there. So you'll see a little bit of white on my palette, right? Now, I told you that I was into teal this year, so I'm taking a little bit of my cobalt teal and I'm making a little puddle of paint here. And see how watery that is? When I rinse it on the side of my little palette here, see how the water drips out of it? That's what you want. So instead of painting it on, I'm gonna pretend that the feathers here are gonna have some teal in it. So I'm gonna hold my brush straight up and I'm just gonna put some markings in him. And with the yellow showing underneath, it's gonna really pop. Now notice that I am not going back and forth trying to make it even. I will take a little bit more of my teal and on his little belly here, now I'm gonna turn this sideways and let this water out. I wanna take the top here and take his little feathers here and do the same thing. Just put some paint on it, just splash it on there. You don't need to know how to paint to do this. For his little eyes, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to fill in the eye area, and I am going to be using on Silver Silk 88 Ultra Round, and this happens to be a size 2, and it's small enough that I can get into my little eyes. So I wet my brush, and I am going to turn this sideways only because it will be easier for you to see without my hand being in the way, but you use it whichever way you want. And I'm going to be using a color called Neutral Tint. And see this, it's almost like a black without being black. I use this color a lot. So I'm gonna twirl my brush and bring it back into a nice little tip. And then first I'm gonna do the shape of the eye, right? Without pressing very hard on my brush. And next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to fill in the little area here. I will do the eye next. And come around here and fill in the eye right here. Now this one came out a little lighter than that, so I am going to take a little bit more of that neutral tint and I'm going to put a little bit more paint on that eye. Okay, and I'm gonna put a little line on here and make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so now I will turn him around and I'm going to show you how to use the scrubber with this later. So I did this on purpose. When you do yours, don't do it so big, do it like this one here, okay? Now I want to do some other colors on this bird that will look good. So I have some Dioxazine Purple here, and this is a really cool color. I just love the way this color looks. So again, I'm making a little puddle here. And I'm going to go right underneath this green here on a straight line, right? And I'm going to darken these areas. Put this here. And almost kind of dry brush it on there. Okay. Let it be. Now, what other color would you like to use? Somebody is saying orange. So let's do a little orange on here. Now, If I continue to keep adding paint onto here, it's going to take away the effect of this little abstract type of thing, right? But this is too bare up here. So I'm going to take a little bit of this orange and just put some little feathers here and there. And I'm going to do some on his head. And right up here. And let it be. I'm going to do the same thing with this little guy up here, but I'm going to turn my little bird around because for the camera you won't see me if I do it straight. And again, I come over here to this side, put some of that orange in it, and if you get too much, just take your paper towel, blot it on there, and do it again. Take some orange. And now I'm going to blend it. I'm going to just come up here, and I want to put a little bit of that on his little eyes here. Now I want some of that purple to be a little stronger up here. So I'm going to take my little purple. Now, see how these little pencil marks are going up and down? What I want to do is I want to pull those little hairs out. Let me do it slow so you can see it. I'm holding my brush straight. I'm going to pull and let it blend in with the orange, right? And I want his little belly here to be shown. Now the next thing we're gonna do is we are going to, and I don't like that blending there too much, so we'll come back to that later. See, you can take it off if it's too much. Okay, so we'll leave that one alone. Now we have the little beak. So I have a little bit of this burnt umber. And I want it a little bit less washy than the other paint. So I'm going to turn this guy around, and here's my beak, right? Here's my beak. Around his little eye, I want a little dark color. So I'm going to take a little bit of that brown and very softly come around here, almost transparent, and do a little chap, 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 chap. See that? Put a little bit of that in here. And just do a little wash up here. It's too light for me. Okay, so now I'm going to put some of that color down here too, so that it all blends together. And we're going to take care of this little area here. So I will come back to my orange. Now, this color is going to look very similar to that. So right here, I'm going to chop, right? Some of that orange. And I'm going to bring some of those hairs out. And some of them up here. Chop, chop, chop. Right? And I'm going to let that dry a little bit so that I don't rip the paper. Now, remember how I told you I thought that eye was a little bit too big and I don't like it? I'm going to show you how to correct it, because if I touch it, oh, it's still a little bit damp. Let's wait a minute. Okay, so now we have these little leaves here, right? Because we have all this texture here from our little, I am going to show you a little trick, but I'm going to put a paper towel first on my palette so that I can drip my paint. Okay, right there. I know that these are going to be green, right? So I am going to make a little puddle of green gold, which is kind of like a yellowy green. And then I'm going to make another little puddle here of the sap green. Sap green. Now see how much water that has? Now there's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you one of the easy ways to do this. I'm going to moisten my paper first. And because my water is a little dirty, you can see that it's kind of a little bit yellow going around. Now, I am going to drop some of that color onto my leaves. See that? And let it bleed into that paper. Don't try to paint leaves, just let it drip into that paper. And it's okay if some of these stay white. I'm not worried about that. Now, we'll do these later because these are going to go in a different direction. So I will take a little bit of the Dioxazine Purple that I started with and some of that green to make it darker. And I'm going to put some of that color right on the side of those leaves. And I want it a little bit darker even. So let me just take a little bit of that. There. And kind of a dirty green. Whoops. And I didn't want that dot there. Well, but I'll show you how to take it off. And take your time and let the paint go where it wants to go, right? Now lift it a little bit on an angle and let it drip down. Now look how cool that looks. Okay, let it drip into all this little, see here? It's dripping down. And it's dripping onto your paper towel. You can take a little bit more. Put it on here, and look what happens now. Magic. And you just tap it and let it be. Don't go back and forth. And I'm just gonna finish the end here so that, and we're gonna have a mat on this so you're not gonna worry. Okay, so this little guy is wet down here. Whoops. This little dot is wet, so, and there's a little dot there that I don't want, so I'm gonna wipe my brush and just kind of pick it up, come here and just suck in that little paint and just rub it, and it's gone. See that? Okay, so now we're gonna fix this little guy on the top here. So I will take this here, put it near the camera so you can see it. And I'm going to take some more of that teal again, right? And let's see so that you can see my brush and not see my hand. I am going to just put some, let me do it this way. I am going to, can you see? Yeah, you can see the stuff from there. So I am going to put some little hairs here, and I'm just going to press my brush on here. Okay, and a little bit down here. And maybe even that little leaf there. And now I'm going to blend some of that paint out. And my little scrubber, if you do it very softly, it will just move that paint around and give you a little shade. See, I'm not really scrubbing very hard. It's pulling the paint away. And I'm going to take my little detail brush here with my teal and my purple. And I'm going to give them some little eyelashes. Okay. Okay, now. We want to get rid of some of that black, right? So I am going to put water into the center and wipe it on my paper towel. I'm going to put a little bit more water. And I'm going to take my little scrubby brush and I'm going to do a little white center on here. And I removed a little bit of that black. See that? Okay. Now we can give it a little bit of detail. This is going to stay the way it is. This little guy is fine the way he is. We're going to turn this around, right? And we're going to wet the other side. Make it drippy, drippy wet. And again, take your green and put it on here. Now I'm going to turn it over and take a little bit of that purple. I'm letting it drip. And I'm going to just put some of that purple on there with the blue and let it do its thing. Okay. Now I don't like this little drip right here, so I am going to just remove that. Okay. Now this here doesn't have too much contrast, right? Like this little guy down here. So I'm going to make this darker. I am going to take this purple, okay, and I'm going to just do some little lines over here for his little feathers. He's going to have some little feathers coming out of the side here. And I'm going to make this a little darker. And now we need a contrast here, so I am going to take this yellow that's here, and I'm going to just put some marks there and some marks here. And that's gonna bring this little guy out. I'm going to wet around his head here a little bit and turn him around. It looks like he has a little halo, doesn't he? But he doesn't. He doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of that purple right here on his eye with my smaller brush so that you can see the little eyeballs. So I'm going to take a little bit of that purple and get rid of excess paint. And I am going to try to make a little round circle. And I'm not filling it in all the way. See that? And I'm going to bring that little line down here a little bit more. Take your time with the eye. The eye is one of the most important areas. So now he looks good, and we're going to add a little purple to this guy's eye that is off camera, I see. We're going to put some little purple on here and a little purple underneath here so that they kind of both look the same. Now, these little guys here have been drying. See that? I like that. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to take a little bit of this purple here and water it down a lot. And I'm going to tap some of that purple. And I don't like that one there. It's a little bit too strong. So this little guy still is bothering me. It's still too wet. So let me just take my paper towel and wipe it off. There, much better. And I'm going to take my little detail brush with a little bit of my orange. Now very softly I'm gonna, oops, still too wet. There we go. Bring some of that out. And a little bit of the purple. No, it makes it too brown. I'm gonna take a little bit of the green and just moisten this area here because I don't like that pen work showing. And here I'm just gonna float some color out. Much, much better. Oh yeah. Whoops. Let me do this over here. Okay. I'm going to put a little division here on his beak, but notice I'm barely putting any water on there. And take another little one right here. And then take a look at it and see how it looks. Now if you put a little mat on your project, you can tell, because with the white it wasn't showing too much, you can tell all the areas that are lifted here from the light dimensional ground by Golden, and it's core watercolor. This is ready to frame. It's an 8.5, 8 by 10, sorry, 8 by 10, and the opening is 8.5. I don't think it needs anything else. It's a very abstract, washy type of birds. And this is something that you can make in 10 minutes and give to your friends. So if you liked my video, give me a thumbs up, please, and subscribe to my channel. I have videos coming out all the time. And check out my website, chriscruzdesigns.com, for other kits and videos. And enjoy your painting.